what is up, guys? John Papp here from johnpappfitness.com here at Acceleration Fitness. Out in the parking lot again. It's beautiful weather. The music's loud in there, you can't hear me, so I decided to step outside again. And I'm here with your 5 weekly tips to gain strength, lose weight, and get jacked, all right? So, and this is episode, I want to say 18 already. Wow. All right, episode 18, something like that. So we're going to get right into it. Get your 5 tips here for the week. Number 1 is kind of learn to utilize single leg movements to limit nervous system fatigue and just overall fatigue. Now, by single leg movements, I mean things like single leg deadlifts, rear foot elevated squats, stuff like that, where you're not going to be able to use as much weight, but it's still going to offer a great training effect, and you'll still get the same benefit out of it, but it's not going to crush you like when you're doing a heavy back squat or heavy deadlifts instead, right? So, for example, this weekend, I was out of town camping with a bunch of friends, and I came back and I just felt beat up, right? We were playing volleyball on the beach all day, swimming, all this stuff. So I was active the whole weekend, didn't really have a chance to recover. So my body was feeling beat up, and it was the start of the training week already. So what I did is kind of sat down and said, okay, I'm gonna take out, the heavy taxing movements and replace them with single leg movements so I can still get that same training effect and still get the benefit of the training session, but it's not going to tax my nervous system. I'm not going to feel like I got hit by a truck tomorrow because I already feel very fatigued. So what I did was use rear foot elevated squats and single leg deadlifts in place of back squats and in place of straight leg deadlifts. So that was what I was supposed to do, but I kind of subbed them out. So I used less than half the weight that I would normally use and got basically the same training effect because I was only using one leg. So that's something to keep in mind, kind of that self auto regulation stuff that I've kind of talked about over the last 18 weeks or so, kind of touched on it here and there. And it's just those type of things that you can use to really, optimize your own training. So that's number 1. Number 2, conditioning doesn't have to be long, slow distance running or biking, right? So traditionally, you think of conditioning work as, getting your road work in, Rocky style, going outside, running 5 miles, 8 miles, 10 miles, whatever it is, to get that endurance up, right? But you don't really have to do that. Now, unless you're training specifically for running, like if that is your sport, you want to run a marathon, or you want to do, a cycling event, then yes, obviously you have to do it because you have to be specific to your sport. But if you're just the general fitness person or, a lifter who wants to improve their conditioning, that's going to actually be a little more detrimental to you and take away versus doing other forms of conditioning. Now, there's many ways to do it. You can do intervals, you can do high intensity interval training, right? HIIT training, it's popular, you've probably heard of that. You can use bike sprints, actual sprints, sleds. And another thing you can do also, it's kind of overlooked, is do the same lifting that you normally do, but decrease the resting times. So if you want to improve your conditioning, each week take off a little time on your rest times, right? So say it's 90-second rest period. All right, next week I'm gonna do 85 or 80-second rest periods. You can kind of decrease there to increase your work capacity and gain that conditioning that you want. So that's number 2. Number 3, goblet squats are not just for beginners. Now, I am guilty of thinking this, even as a coach, that goblet squats, once you get to a certain threshold, it's kind of a useless movement. But I've kind of come back around. Now, I'm not saying I didn't use it for beginners. Used it for beginners, intermediate, stuff like that, or people who just needed to gain the strength and were able to goblet squat a 50-pound dumbbell and get that training effect. But for myself, I kind of stopped using them because I got to the point where you're squatting for 400 plus, so you wouldn't think that a 100-pound dumbbell, if that's where your dumbbells go up to, or 150, whatever, a 100-pound dumbbell would have that much of an effect on you. But really, they can be utilized. Now, it's not going to be your main movement, but you can use them as an accessory or a finisher. You can do things like pauses, so pause reps, go down to the bottom, pause for 3 to 5 seconds, maybe even longer, stuff like that, to kind of be able to utilize them. And I do like them. I love them because they teach the movement so well. It's such a great way to teach and just reinforce proper squat mechanics by using them. So that's something to think about. Even if you're an advanced lifter, there are ways to throw those kind of what are thought to be the beginner movements into your workouts, just to kind of change things up and, you know, just kind of step back and work on the mechanics of things again, just to touch up, even if you are advanced. So that's number 3. Number 4 is upper back work is very important. So last week I talked a lot about the glutes, the hamstrings, even the low back, right? And kind of tie that into preventing low back pain and injuries there. But now I kind of want to talk to you about upper back work, right? So training the upper back is just as important because it's still, okay, so take a step back here. Training the posterior chain, I talked a lot about that 3 weeks ago. Training the posterior chain is like the top one, lost my train of thought there. Sorry guys. The base of the pyramid. Then the kind of level above that is where the hamstrings, the glutes, you know, the low back, the erectors come into play. And then after that is the upper back work. Now the upper back work is very important too to help with posture and prevent back pain. And especially if you sit at a desk all day or spend a lot of time on a computer or phone, anything like this, where you're rounded forward here with your shoulders, whereas the more you strengthen that upper back, the more you can correct your posture and pull back with those muscles so they're not elongated and weak, right? So the stronger they are, the better. And it's gonna help you with basically everything, right? So just general, everyday, you know, tasks that require strength, you know, just lifting in general, it's going to help you. The stronger your upper back is, the better off you are. So now I'm going to kind of tie this into number 5, kind of made this 2. So I'm going to tie this to number 5 and just kind of talk about some of the exercises that you can use. So some of the things that I do with myself and the other trainers here, we all do a lot of upper back work in our training sessions, lots of upper back work, and with our clients obviously as well, and athletes. So some of the things that we use are face pulls. Face pulls are awesome. So you can use anything for this, a band, TRX, you know, suspension trainer, whatever, cable machine, where you just pull back up. It's like a very high row, right? So a row is traditionally here. So face pull is going to be up nice and high with the elbows. Really hit the upper back and even into the lower neck area. So those are great, especially for posture. Rows, obviously I kind of touched on that just there, but any kind of row, any low row, again, you can use whatever equipment you have. I don't think I have to get into specifics on that. Things like shrugs. So shrugs are kind of traditionally thought of as a bro movement, right? Just shrug away. But when you do these, it's important not to go too heavy. A lot of people go too heavy on their shrugs, so they don't actually, have this little movement, but really you could go all the way up there. So go a little bit lighter and pull all the way up and slow eccentric down. It's gonna really benefit you rather than loading, if you're doing a barbell shrug, but then loading 3 plates on there and doing little speed shrugs like this with your head up and not even going like a quarter of the way in that range of motion, right? So take the weight down, drop the ego, go all the way up, slow eccentric down, you'd be a lot better off. And then there's a lot of variations in the shrug. I know Louis Simmons from Westside is really big on kind of different variations for the shrug, and he kind of, his work kind of brought the attention of me to it, and I started playing with it, and it really does work. So you can pull the shoulders back. That's also going to kind of work the rear delts as well as the traps and whatnot, and the elevators of the scap. But there's just some different variations that you can do. Obviously barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, whatever you got. You can do plates to also hit the grip, stuff like that. So then there's other things like I's, Y's, and T's. I's, Y's, and T's are great. We also do a lot of these. Again, lots of variations. Basically an I is any movement that's straight up like that. A Y is making a Y with your arms. And a T is palms facing out like that. So you can do them with the suspension trainer. You can do them lying down on a bench, so face down, put it on a low incline or even a medium incline, and then I, Y, and T. Those are really great to hit the upper back, and especially if you do them in succession, because it kind of pre-fatigues as you go through all those movements, so it hits every little muscle group, or every little muscle in that muscle group. So those are just some of the examples of the exercises that we use here at Acceleration, I use personally. and all the trainers doing our own training programs and with the clients. So again, upper back work. So that's all I got for you this week, guys. Follow me on the social medias at John Papp Fitness on Instagram, John Papp Fitness on Facebook, little J dash P-A-P-P, J Papp. On Snapchat, I put a lot of stuff training wise on Snapchat as well, and YouTube, John Papp Fitness. Hit like, subscribe, that'd be really appreciated. Thanks guys, keep chasing it. Boom.